Welcome to Business Connect, a podcast produced and presented by the City of Miramar in the great state of Florida, the gateway to the Caribbean and Latin America. This podcast airs every third Thursday in the month at 7 p.m. and brings you information, tips, and ideas from experts to take your business to the next level. We also get to hear from folks who have done it all and can share insights with you. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host, Johnny Douglas.
Welcome to the City of Miramar's Business Connect, where we connect your business to what's important. My name is Johnny Douglas, and I'm your host for today. Today, I have a special guest for you today. Her name is Lisa Perez. She's the founder and president of HBL Resources. We would love to welcome you in here. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much, Johnny. I'm doing absolutely fantastic. Always a pleasure to be here with you.
It is always a pleasure to have you here. You know, one of the things that we know for business, we talk about marketing all the time. We talk about things like financial assistance. But some of those things that we forget to talk about is HR awareness.
Yeah.
Like, how do you protect your business and how do you protect your employees at the same time of growing your business? I think we sometimes omit that out of the conversation.
Yes.
I would love for you to bring that conversation to the forefront today.
Absolutely.
So that we can discuss that and maybe shed some light on how important and valuable it is for a company to consider that when they're doing their business plan.
Absolutely. And I think we've talked about that on occasion, right? Mm-hmm. When visiting and going to the various programs that the city offers, that the county offers as well from a bigger scale. We see the finance, the accounting, and the marketing tracks, but I don't see the HR person. And I'd be happy to show up and do that for any of the associations, organizations that need that. But it's often the missing piece and super important because it's all about people.
That's good. And I'm so glad that you're here for that. I want to make sure that people and the audience know your qualifications.
Yeah.
So how long have you been in business?
Oh gosh, 30 plus years. I just added the plus maybe 3 years ago. But I come from a long history and wonderful career in human resources. Started as an HR clerk, in fact, and kind of worked my way up. Specialized a little bit in recruitment and succession planning. Went into a VP role as well. 20 of those years in hospitality. And now my firm's been up and around for almost 13 years this August. So
it's safe to say that when business owners take advantage of your services, they're in good hands.
Oh,
and you're going to
absolutely.
steer them in the right way that they should grow their business properly and stay in compliance with what's going on today.
Absolutely. I'm also dual certified, right? There are several human resources certifications out there, and I hold two of, I would think, the most important, the Society for Human Resource Management. I've had that for decades, and also the Human Resources Certification Institute. That tells you that I'm top of game and I'm staying on top of the education because it does change. Right. HR is never stagnant. It's always changing. You always got to stay top of the game.
That's good. Well, instead of having, and also accompanied with all of those other credentials that you do have and certifications that you have, you're also the founder of the National Management Training Week.
Yes.
Okay, so explain that. Okay.
Oh my gosh, National Management Training Week started in 2021 or so, and it's really focused on bringing the conversation to the human element of managing people, right? We do all of the compliance training. We do have to make sure that we're not asking the questions we have to ask and all of those things. But National Management Training Week isn't just about let's train our managers, right? It's this focus week that says everything maybe doesn't stop, but we take time to conduct training, to roll out succession planning programs, to get our senior leaders together to plan strategies for training, throughout the year and things of that nature. It's that focused time, and we actually host an event that's all week long. We deliver content Monday through Friday. Thursday's usually our summit day where we're doing a lot of content, 9 to 4 o'clock, so it's a long day. But it's also, all of my speakers are focused on a human element, right? Whether it's integrity, transparency, how do we, do the compliance piece, but really focus on the human element.
Right. And speaking of the human element, today in our society, there's a lot of sensitive subjects that we're dealing with now in the workspace. And I think it is important for business owners and employees to know those boundaries of what those sensitivity factors are that can put a business at risk.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think that today, employees, right, our workers, our workforce, they want that delicate balance, right? Because before I show up and I'm your employee, I'm a human first, right? Back in the 80s and 90s when I was coming up, it was leave your problems at the door. I never subscribed to that. But, you know, this day and age, we want that delicate balance. I want you to know that I've got, you know, a family at home that I care about, maybe a parent that I'm taking care of, and a child too, and I'm in that sandwich generation. Those things are important because you as the leader, the manager, need to be able to focus on those things. Of course, you always got to do your job, right? But be able to, from a diversity perspective, from a human element perspective, be able to meet my needs as well. Right. It really is a win-win, right? You help me, help you, and vice versa. And I think that that's a delicate balance. So I think what used to be taboo to talk about is opening up a little bit so that we can really, you know, touch that human element, that person that's behind the job.
Right, right. And when we're talking about the sensitive issues and things that go on, and the human element when we talk about HR businesses and the business affairs in the business itself. What is the most important advice that you can give to a business owner when it comes to any of those touchy subjects? Yeah. Because they're in the business because they want to make money.
Of course.
And I think there's a fine line between even an employee being abusive to the rules and regulations of a business versus, you know, the business in the same format being abusive as well. So what's the perfect balance of that?
And you're right, you know, there is that perfect balance. And I think, you know, there's nothing wrong with an employer having expectations, right? We've got to create our widgets, type as many pages, whatever it is that productivity standard is. Nothing is going to change that, right? We have to get things done. We're in business to make business. If we don't make business and if we don't have revenues, then we can't pay our people. Right, so and they're employed as a result, right? And so that's the win-win for everybody, is that we stay in business, right? So you got to do your job, but at the same time, it's how we can flex, right? I think the pandemic taught us a world of information, right? We can still be effective, efficient, productive, even in a remote or a virtual workspace, right? I think that is, if there is a highlight, right, to that crazy period of time, it was to show us that we do have the ability to create that flexible work arrangement. You know, it doesn't have to be 9 to 5, maybe it's 3 to 7, right? Whatever it is, but there is that happy medium that can meet the needs of others while still getting, again, the work done, the productivity there, and the revenues in. So
when it comes to a small business owner, someone who has maybe 2 employees, is it a need for HR?
Oh, absolutely. Even with one employee. In fact, I was just at JMI Institute. I do some training for them in their entrepreneur program. And even if you have one employee, there's like 12 or 13 different federal laws that you have to comply with one employee, right? And so that training, that's one of our Complete Manager Makeover modules, is looking at the legalities. Even with one employee, what do I need to know, right? And that might be industry specific. It's definitely when it comes to a federal perspective, right? I-9 forms and regulatory compliance. Just one employee puts you in the seat to have to really take a look at some of the landmines that you have as an employer of people.
Right. That is the true statement, because with an employee number of 100 employees that you have, it only takes one to crumble your business.
That's right, absolutely.
It just takes one.
Absolutely. Right. And when you think about the various regulations, just federal, we're not even talking state, the various federal regulations that you have to comply with between 1 to 14 employees, there's quite a few, right, that we have to take care of, and we have to make sure that we're complying.
Wow, okay. So now that you have established your business, and I know that you're doing great with it, because you're in high demand these days. You're busy.
I am very busy. I am very busy, and I'm so thankful.
Right. Yeah. And so one of the things you have done now was to pivot your business, and what your concentration on is now public speaking.
Yes. Yes.
And engaging with the audience.
Yes.
How does that look for a business if they wanted to have you come and to engage with their employees?
Oh, absolutely. So, gosh, there's a rainbow. You just opened up a big old can of worms there, Johnny. But, I've always been a speaker, right? And now it's part of the revenues of my business. That goes without saying. So it depends on what the function is, what the event is, right? I might be hired to go into a conference for motivational speaking, and I go in with my Transforming the Human and Human Resources keynote, right? But speaking also means coming in and delivering training to your managers as well, to the managers that are out there who need that human element, right? That soft skills of managing people, right? We have to be in compliance. We have to do performance evaluations. We have to correct performance. We may even have to separate someone from employment. But how we go about having that conversation makes the biggest difference, and that's what I do. That's the gap that I fill. So it depends, what's the function, what's the gig, and what is it that the human resources element can bring to the table from that perspective. All again tied into that human element. It's super important. Got to get compliance, but how we do it, right? It's what you say and how you say it. Well, it's also who you're saying it to, right? What's going on? I'm fortunate that while 9/11 wasn't fortunate, but going through a massive layoff, right? It was actually a WARN Act notice, which means lots of things from a federal regulations perspective. I still have people who I'm in touch with who I had to lay off during that, right? Because that I think I value those individuals because that tells me I did something right to be able to maintain that rapport, even in spite and in light of such a very, very difficult situation. That's what I want managers to do. That's what I want leaders to do. That's what I want business to do with their team members. Do the work, gotta send the message, but how we do it makes a world of difference.
In my former profession, as a supervisor, I had that silver lining as to how do you let an employee go, separation, because it's and it brings about a great responsibility with you because it comes with an anxiety of how do I do this, because now you're placing someone in a vulnerable position where they're no longer having an income because you're separating them from their income.
Right.
So how do I do this?
Yeah.
And how
That's
do I
what
do
we
this
do.
delicately that the separation won't cause friction in the long run, but and do it to make them feel, do it with dignity and respect to make sure that they walk out saying, okay, maybe it's not me, but maybe I wasn't just the right fit for this job. But there's no negative on my personality or my character.
Exactly. And you hit my tagline almost perfectly, right? My training of managers, my training of leaders, even up and coming, right? We've got to equip our up and coming as well. Is focused to make sure that no matter how tough the conversation, every employee walks out of their manager's office with their dignity intact.
Yes.
Right? We can still have those tough conversations, but bring compassion into that conversation, bring empathy into that situation, and be able to ensure that that employee is on as firm a footing as can possibly be given that situation, right? And providing resources, right? Interestingly enough, the Department of Labor called me during my time at the Fontainebleau during this 9/11, and they had found out what we were doing in terms of that transition process. The information and the resources and just all the things that we were doing. It took 45 minutes for some of these conversations, and we took the time. And I'll never forget, this one particular gentleman looked at me at the end of the 45-minute conversation. He'd just been impacted, leaned back in his chair, and the story's in my book, actually. And he said, are you having this conversation with everybody? And I said, well, I can't have it with everybody. There's just too many. But I've equipped our leaders to have the same conversation. And he sat back and he said, thank you. Well, it was that one that said, I talked to my director and I said, close my door after they leave. I need to cry, right? Because it is emotional for both sides. But really that compassion really, really speaks volumes to your employees when they're affected in that way.
Now speaking of your book, which I've read.
Shameless plug.
Do you have a copy of your book here?
Of course I do, Johnny. I'm always supposed to have a copy of my book. So The Complete Manager Makeover is my book, and it really does go through the journey, right, of the employee life cycle, right, from hiring to managing performance, who they are. I'm a DISC model of human behavior specialist, right, personality and communication styles, and how does that show up differently for all the different conversations. And the legal stuff is in there, and it's a workbook, but it's also a story of my journey in human resources and my career, and why some of the stuff that's in there is so important. So.
Oh, wow. And it was a pleasure for me to read it because I got to know some of your background and got you where you went. I was like, wow, I didn't know she did that. You know?
Yeah.
So it was a really interesting read for me.
It was an interesting write for me.
So now when we're talking about your services and what you offer businesses, there may be some small businesses that says, well, although I hear what you're saying, this is not affordable for me. I'm not going to be able to afford. With all her credentials, with all what she brings to the table, she's way beyond mine.
Right. Yeah, you would think. And that's in fact not the case, right? I am so thankful for my Chamber of Commerce journey. My Chamber of Commerce journey really showed me and equipped me to be able to figure out, how do I serve my small business community, right? Because small businesses, they want to do HR right. And much to your point, they think, well, I can't afford her, right? And if I was in, my field and my vocation, yes, I took a step back and took one heck of a pay cut to start this 13 years ago almost. But I also am reminded that when you want to do HR right, it's got to be reachable, right? You've got to be able to reach it from a financial perspective. So I do focus on small business and offer them, some pricing that can help address that budgetary constraint that might be there. And I've helped some small businesses with the foundation of their recruitment. I've helped with some recruiting, right? You can't just call me and say, hey, I need you to recruit for me. I need to get to know your business, know who I'm putting in, where I'm putting employees in, right? And making sure the foundation and infrastructure is right for me to say, yeah, I can vouch for this organization, right? Because I'm putting my reputation on the line to place people as well. But there's a plethora of services that I have for small businesses, many of which are under 20 employees, under 5 even employees, and some larger organizations as well that have different needs from the HR arena.
Awesome. I know I'm not going to tell my age.
Okay.
But there's a time when you had the employee handbook.
Yes, we still do.
Is that still a thing
It's
now?
very much still a thing. It's really, while it's not federally or state mandated to have it, there's so much information and there's so many notices that you need to provide that pertain to those federal and state regulations. Where else are you going to put it? Right? Am I going to hand a piece of paper to an employee for every single federal regulation, or am I going to put it in a nice little handbook and give them the whole thing, right? It really helps to reduce how many questions you're asked, right? What are my benefits? When is PTO? How long do I have? When right? So hand them the handbook and make it not just words on a page, right? These are living, breathing documents. Your culture should be infused. Your brand identity should be infused. It should speak your language, right? When it comes to the vision, the mission, the values of your organization. It's not just, here's the policies. It really should be so much more than that, and help the onboarding process to help that employee get to know you, your organization, and your brand.
One thing I do know about the employee handbook, when I was in that position where I had the authority over employees, it kept the leadership on top of of their mission statement.
Right.
And I believe that handbook helped us to hold firm to the mission statement and the vision of the business.
Yes.
Because sometimes working day to day, you can lose that. You lose what the vision is.
Right.
Okay, so what are we striving for?
Exactly.
What is the vision? What is our mission here? And sometimes we get lost because you're doing day to day work.
Yes.
But if you're holding to that employee handbook, it reflects the mission and it reflects the vision.
Correct. And it should, right? Not all do, right? I do a lot of handbook work. In fact, it's been picking up quite a bit lately on that particular service. But we want to make sure that it speaks that if your employees cannot recite the mission of your business, you've got the wrong mission.
Oh, wow.
right? Either you've got the wrong mission, they're not bought into the mission, or you're not sharing the mission, right? You're not ensuring that it is in the fabric and culture of the organization, right? It's a living, breathing thing. I mentioned being the HR director at the Fontainebleau, and one of the things was, an organizational design shift that said, this is who we say we're supposed to be, but this is the behavior of the people? No. We need to start to maybe look at how do we incentivize, how do we reward and recognize that you aligned to the mission, the vision, and the values, and say, hoorah, congratulations, you aligned. And what happens is more people want to go and align with that, right? And those who don't might exit, right? But definitely something that it's not just words on a piece of paper or in a handbook. It has to be exuded within the culture and fabric and the day-to-day of the organization with the behaviors of leadership as well as your team members.
That was huge what you just said. It was huge because they have to line up. And I think that's where sometimes you lose footing.
Yeah.
And you lose the buy-in of the employees. One of the things in my formal job, we always say, what is the buy-in?
Yes.
What is the buy-in hook?
Yes. What's in it for me?
Right, what's in it for me?
Yeah.
Instead of management had to look at it, instead of what's in it for me, what's in it for them?
Exactly.
You have young people, money may not be the thing for them.
Exactly.
It may be the bling
yes,
for them.
Yes.
It may be so what, when you look at the diversity of your company,
right,
of your business,
right,
what is the buy-in for those individuals on the level where they are?
Exactly.
And how do you make that happen for them?
Exactly.
To give them the buy-in of the mission and the vision?
Absolutely, because, as to HRify your comment, new entrants into the workforce, right? Newer entrants into the workforce, they have different needs and expectations. But that's a generational thing, too. I do generational diversity training. There's a little piece of that in the book as well. And what we see is each generation just has different needs, right? But there's a reason behind that, right? What we go through, our experiences, our generational traits come as a result of what was happening in our formidable years, right? So it's like, for an example, right? The early entrants now, they expect to be on their phones and text you or WhatsApp you that they're going to be late or, coming in or need to be absent or what have you. It's been their primary form of communication since they were 2 years old. So why wouldn't they show up in the workplace and just expect that to be the norm, right? So I think that needs to be looked at, but I also think it's important that employers and managers, right, who support these team members, look to say, what is it that you need, right? I think sometimes, we throw a benefit or we throw a policy or we do this and that in the hopes that it is what our team members want and it'll make them happier at work and re-engaged and retained. But meanwhile, they're saying, well, I didn't mean that. I meant this. But we don't ask them. Right?
Exactly.
We don't ask them, what would it, if we're blowing up our benefits package and recreating it, what are some of the things you would say? Now, that doesn't mean we have to do those things, but at least they're heard and you can consider some of the things that they might be needing, like caregiving in the workplace. It's a big issue right now. Sandwich generation. I've got an older parent who's ailing. I'm working to take care of them. I've got children who are, dependent children. I'm in the sandwich, right? How are employers showing up for this issue? And we're just so happy to have, partners who can help employers solve that problem.
That's a huge point what you made, because one of the things that we've even done in our department here in the city of Miramar, we have a lot of programs and a lot of
so good.
Information and resources that we provide to our business community.
Excellent.
One of the reasons why we got them is because we did what you just said. We go to the end user and ask them, what is it that you're expecting from the city?
What are your needs?
What are your expectations from us?
Yes.
And then we'll give you our expectations and how to gain resources, and we'll find that resources for you. Even if we don't have it, we have it for you. We'll find it for you.
Yes, for sure.
But
you guys sure do.
But we have to feed into what you're asking
what
for,
are your
not
needs?
what we think
Exactly,
you want.
exactly. No, you guys do it right here. Not just because you're my home city, but City of Miramar does it right when it comes to serving the business community.
Thank you.
And really, podcasts such as this and all of the different economic and business development events and functions and the cultural awareness events. So glad glad that I selected the City of Miramar to be a resident for 24 years now, but also
Awesome.
happy to serve, we serve the U.S., so I have clients all over the United States.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Okay. So now I'm going to pivot here, and I'm going to ask you, what's coming down the pipeline in 2024 that business owners need to be aware of when it comes to HR issues?
No, yeah, great question. So, as I mentioned, I love HR because it's always living and growing and breathing and changing all the time. But I think a couple of things that are really important for our viewers and listeners to know about are some changes with the FLSA, the Fair Labor Standards Act. The FLSA has been around since 1935-36, the Great Depression, right? When we started to look at minimum wage and overtime pay and all of those kinds of things. But particularly of interest this year is a potential increase to the exempt minimum wage, right? So let me clarify that. When you have an exempt employee, they don't get overtime, right? They're typically your managers, right? They're salaried. You can't just slap the title manager and pay them, salary. There's a lot more to the test. But the first thing in that test is the wage that you're paying them. Now, right now, it's about, 568 or something like that. I don't remember it all. But if you take $17.10 an hour and times it by 2080, that's the number. 2080 being full-time, 52 hours a week, right? 40 hours. And so that's going to go up. It's going to go up, and what that's going to do, and they're looking at a number like $56,000. So it's going to go something from 35 to 56. That's a big jump.
That's a huge.
Okay, so employers have decisions that they need to make. If the position does qualify for the exemption today under the current salary standard, it won't qualify if you don't increase them to that new minimum salary. Okay, thereby making those individuals in your workforce non-exempt. Now they're hourly. Okay, that's a huge shift when you think about it, right? Or you bump them up 20 grand and they can stay the way they are. I don't know that a lot of employers can do that. So we really have to start looking at this now because we are, within, I would say, months of this decision. Typically, we see minimum wages and those kinds of changes happening in September. So we're still waiting. So get my newsletter at HBLresources.com and we'll let you know when we see it come out of the Department of Labor or the Wage and Hour Division. So that's a big change. So that alone is enough to give them. I could go on and on, but
right. I think you got a lot of our. I think you got a lot of our
that's
listeners
enough.
going, whoa.
Yeah, that's enough to keep you at bay for now or busy figuring it out.
Right.
But yeah, I think the other big thing around that same concept, FLSA, Fair Labor Standards Act, is how are we classifying our employees? Do I have an employee who's a W-2 employee who's on my payroll, who I'm paying payroll taxes for, or have I made them an independent contractor, right? There is a lot of litigation and has been a lot of litigation for the last several years on the misclassification of workers. And this is a hot issue for small business, for any industry business, because a misclassification, if you are paying somebody as a 1099, right, an independent contractor, and it's found that they can and should have been classified as a W-2 employee because of the way you're treating them, their financial income is incumbent on just you, right? You're the only one that they're working for. There could be misclassification issues, and you could be on the line for back wages, for back taxes, payroll taxes, right? All of those kinds of things. It could wipe businesses out. So I think it's really important that employers are not misclassifying because, there's a lot bubbling up in terms of litigation. All it takes is, an independent contractor to slip and fall at your employer, and they go for workers' comp benefits and find out they don't have them, and then suddenly, you better believe they might be asking whether or not they should have been an employee to begin with.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow.
And that's a true story, by the way. That is a real event.
So it is incumbent that an employer kind of look at what they're doing.
Exactly. And how they're doing it.
And how they're doing it to make sure that they come in compliance, but also make sure that their business is safe.
Yes.
And their employees are safe.
Absolutely. And protected.
And protected. Yeah. And I think once we once businesses really understand the HR procedure and how it's not there to hurt them, it's there to help them. It would be more of a conversation.
Absolutely.
When they're creating their business plan.
Absolutely.
When they're setting up their business, when they're going up their LLC, and how that looks and how that works for them.
Absolutely.
So,
it's really a mitigation of risk, right? We look at that risk mitigation when we think about our finances, right? Having money in the bank, a line of credit, or this and that, but we don't think about that with our human resources. Your HR could probably, fine you just as much as your IRS agent can, and sometimes more. So,
well, this has really been interesting because I have been waiting to have this conversation because I know there's a lot of businesses that I speak with. Yeah. And even when we have some of our events, and no matter what organization is having an event, that seems to be one conversation that rarely comes up.
Give them my number.
Rarely comes up about, human resources and how to protect your investment, which is your business. Realize that some people that start a business, they are using their 401k. They're wiping out everything. They're taking. They're getting a second mortgage in hopes to make all that up and recoup that in their business. Maybe not in the first 2 years, but the 5 years, they're definitely going to see some return.
It does take some
on
time,
that investment
for sure.
And if you're making strides and you're doing that and you're growing your business, to have something happen that you had no idea what happened would really, really be.
It could be devastating.
And the thing is that there's no excuse.
Exactly. I'm right here.
When it comes to even the laws, there's no excuse.
There's not. There's just not. So. There's just not. You can't. Business ownership is a big responsibility, right? And we have to know the marketing, the sales, the human resources, all pieces of that pie are equally as necessary to make you successful and sustainable. And, if not me, then someone. There's several HR consultants out there. Many of my colleagues are out there. I partner with many of them for various things. Find someone who you can trust, rely on to fill that gap if it's a gap in your organization at this point.
Well, Lisa, Perez, it is always a pleasure having you with us. You always enlighten us. You always bring us resources and information that is healthy for our business to grow and strive and survive and sustain its working in the community.
I appreciate it. I am always happy to support my City of Miramar in any way.
Thank you. Well, to all of our listeners today, we thank you for being with us today. We want you to pay attention to all the resources and everything we have available through the City of Miramar. If you want to get on our newsletter, what you want to do is go to MiramarFL.gov /Business Pulse. In that newsletter, you're going to find everything that the city is doing, all our events. If there's anything that's going on with marketing, with finances, with HR, you're going to find it all there in the Business Pulse. Also, I want to remind you that we have our Open Rewards Shop Local program. That is a wonderful, wonderful chance for you to give back to the community by shopping and also getting 10% cash back on things you buy with Miramar businesses. The Miramar businesses that are participating in that program, we have a flyer that's available all around the city. You can click on that and download the app. And also, there's another QR code that will let you know a list of all the businesses that participate in the program. So we hope that you go into that too. That's on our MiramarFL.gov website. Go check it out. And again, we thank you for being with us today. Be happy, be kind, but most importantly, stay connected.
Thanks for listening to the Business Connect podcast. Be sure to visit MiramarFL.gov/podcast to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content. We would love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review on iTunes. Until next time.